All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. And I've got a few colleagues helping with tech and making sure that we can let waiting room participants in. If you're just joining us today, welcome to our Spotlight series, our kickoff of our Spotlight series today, which will be a conversation with Office of the Insurance Commissioner Kuderer. We're really excited to have her and to have what I think it'll be a really engaging and illuminating discussion about an issue or several issues around homeowners insurance and affordability, climate change, and so much more. Before we do that, just wanted to first make sure that if you haven't had a chance, that you go ahead, if you're comfortable, and put your name, your organization, and where in Washington you're joining us from today in the chat. It's nice to know who's here today among our partners across our statewide affordable homeownership network. I know that in looking at the chat so far today, I've seen folks representing housing counseling, legal aid, realty, lending, advocates, so much more. So thank you for joining us, and we're excited to have you here today. We hope this will be an interactive discussion and helpful for everyone who's working in this space. So just a little bit of a preview of our agenda. This will be kind of a 1 hour sort of lunch and learn interaction discussion format. And what we'll do is we'll start with just a few items of introduction from Washington Homeownership Resource Center, or WHRC. So I'll just share a few, updates and ways that you can get involved with the work that we're doing and ways that you can tune in to future conversations like this. And then we'll dive right into our discussion with the commissioner. I've got some questions for you, Commissioner Kuderer, but we will also have some time for a couple questions that have come in through our statewide Slack community, as well as through emails I've received prior to this event. And then, of course, audience Q&A. So if you have burning questions for Commissioner Kuderer, we do have WHRC staff on hand. They're going to be helping me manage that chat and just kind of cataloging those and making sure that if we have time, we can, have you answer as many as you can, Commissioner Kuderer, today. And then we will close from there. Again, we are recording this event, so if you have colleagues who were unable to make it today, we will post that on our YouTube channel and also get that out to our email list and list of registrants after the event today. So, a couple items before we get started. One is I mentioned earlier that this is the first of a series of monthly, we're kind of calling them like mini forums, spotlight series events that we're having throughout this summer and fall. And so beyond today, if you are enjoying the engagement, you want to stay tuned to hot topics around home ownership, we've got additional ones in store. So coming soon, we have August 12th, same time. It's going to be virtual from 12 to 1 p.m. free. You can register on our website. We'll also be sending out, the links and everything to attendees today. But this one is going to be called Closer to Home, Building a Community-Driven Homeownership Expo that works. So this one I'm super excited about because it features a group that we're calling the Three Amigas from Thurston County, who have been working together to bring homeownership opportunity to folks at the city of Lacey and beyond, and ways that they have found useful in creating an effective homeownership services event where they can measure their impact. So they're going to be sharing what worked, what didn't work, how they evolved. And so if you're involved in any kind of homeownership advocacy, practitioner work, outreach, for helping folks achieve or sustain homeownership, stay tuned for that one. They've got some amazing tips. And then on September 23rd, we will be doing a deep dive into Washington's starter home plan. So this one, you've probably heard there's a lot of buzz around the Washington starter home plan, and there's a lot of questions about it. So we're going to be talking with a couple of the architects of that plan and really just getting a little closer to understanding what it is they're trying to achieve, how they hope that this plan will drastically address our dire housing supply shortage, and specifically around increasing homeownership opportunity for folks across our rural, urban, and suburban communities across all 39 counties. It's an ambitious plan, so I'm excited to hear more and learn more about how we can get involved and support. And then this event and others that we host are free, but for those who are able, please consider, we are a nonprofit, making a gift to WHRC to support our ongoing homeownership programming, advocacy, and statewide engagement efforts. So there's a QR code. You can also go to our website. Nonprofits are cool. You should give. And lastly, just before we dive in, other ways that you can get involved, we do have an awesome event page. So if you are looking for homeownership opportunities in your area, either as a future homeowner yourself or a person looking to sustain homeownership or just wanting to get involved in advocacy and so much more, visit our website. There's lots of ways for you to get involved and to share your own events. We also have a statewide Slack community. Slack is a really cool and free platform, and we have been using it to gather us all together to be able to answer questions in real time, commiserate, joke, but also do some really good work together in between meetings and get-togethers like this. And then lastly, you can serve on our board. You can become a referral partner. You can join our newsletter. There's lots of ways to plug in with the work that the Washington Homeownership Resource Center is doing. So I know you're all really excited to get to the meat of this forum today, and I am as well. So what we're going to be doing today is speaking with Washington Insurance Commissioner Patty Kuderer. So I want to just give a brief bio and intro to her and to myself, and then we're going to just dive in. It's going to be a chat. This is actually the first time the Commissioner Kuderer and I are meeting and chatting, so I'm really excited about it myself. So Patty Kuderer was elected in 2024 as Washington's 9th Insurance Commissioner. And as Insurance Commissioner, she's committed to protecting consumers, promoting transparency and fairness in the insurance market, and advocating for expanded access to affordable health care. Commissioner Kuderer's current priorities include providing restitution to policyholders who are harmed and exploring innovative and collaborative pathways to reach universal health care. She's also raising awareness of climate change, monitoring how it affects the insurance industry, and encouraging mitigation practices to build more resilient communities. Prior to taking office as commissioner, she served for almost a decade in the Washington state legislature in both the state house and the Senate. So really excited to chat with you today. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Elizabeth Bittis. I'm the WHRC, Washington Homeownership Resource Center Executive Director, and I'm just nerdy about home ownership. You can read more about me on the website. You really want to hear from Commissioner Kuderer today, so we're going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and stop share so you can see both of us. And I am going to make sure we don't have anyone else here in the waiting room, and we're going to get going. We're going to get cooking. So the first thing that I'm really excited to ask you, Commissioner Kuderer, is first off, as you can tell, I'm stoked to talk to you today. I know that the audience is excited to hear from you today, but it's the first time we're meeting. So I think we need to go way back a little bit. You have a really interesting role. You are clearly, I did my Google search prior to this session, and I know that you have.
Don't believe everything you read on the internet.
I heard from a number of advocates that I work with that you have both a personal, not just professional, but personal ties and passion for the work that you do around insurance. So I want to start there today. Why do you do the work you do?
Well, thank you, Elizabeth, and it is a pleasure to meet you, and thank you for your time and the invitation to be on your show. And also thank you to everyone who's taking time out of their day to come and listen. You know, insurance really is deeply personal to me, healthcare in particular. And it goes back to the birth of my daughter. pre-Obamacare. She was an extreme premature. She was 3 months early. So she was a pound, 13 ounces. She spent 5 months in the hospital in an incubator. She was hooked up to all this machinery, including a tube down her throat that looked like it weighed more than she did. And she had 3 surgeries while she was there. And, the doctors were pretty straightforward with me that she could die at any minute, and I believed them. So when I got news from, a bureaucrat sitting in a cubicle somewhere telling me that they weren't going to pay for her care because they claimed it was experimental, I went into lawyer mode. And a mom under that kind of stress, who also happens to have the skills of an attorney and who had already represented insurance companies by that point and had sued insurance companies by that point. Let me just say I didn't take that message well, right? And they paid for my daughter. But I had to think, when I went back to the NICU and saw the other families doing the same kind of vigil around their baby's incubator like I was, that they were doing the same thing to those families. And then to add insult to injury, when I brought her home at 5 months and she was still medically fragile, there was a letter waiting for me from the company telling me that my 5-month-old medically fragile infant had nearly reached her lifetime cap. And so for me, it like flipped a switch, and I realized that we had a morally bankrupt healthcare system, and it was willing to sacrifice people's lives for profit. And I just became, a convert to universal health care that was affordable for people and that no one should be denied care, because none of us knows what's going to hit us, right? We don't know some of our choices can impact our health, but sometimes things happen out of the blue. You get hit by a bus, that sort of thing. And I just have been on this quest. Well, when I was in the legislature, we created the Universal Health Care Commission. We intentionally put the insurance commissioner on the commission. So I'm sure you can put 2 and 2 together and see why I wanted this job. So that's been my main motivator for doing this work.
Thank you so much for sharing your personal connection to the mission of your work. I think just looking at the chat and just knowing some of the folks in this space, I think that your story really resonates. One of the things that WHRC does is we operate the state's official foreclosure prevention hotline. And I have to say, when we hear folks who are calling us
recording stopped
every day, we notice that people are making tough decisions, right? Like, I know your personal story relates to a healthcare situation, and we're going to be diving into homeownership, but we know from the hotline, we know from the folks we work with that it's all connected, right? So we're going to be diving in a little bit more on the homeownership side, but knowing that affordability is crucial and that there's so much in the system that needs attention. So I appreciate that.
Recording in progress.
Looks like we had a technical difficulty with the recordings. Thanks for fixing that, folks. So the thing that I want to first just get out of the way is that affordability piece, right? Homeowners, as far as the insurance is concerned, seeing rising premiums at the same time as they're seeing rising everything, right? A group of friends and I were talking the other day about how it's like, you're having to make tough decisions sometimes about, groceries versus utilities versus mortgage. And so what are the primary drivers when we're thinking about homeowners insurance, the primary drivers of those increases that you're seeing?
Well, the primary driver of homeowners insurance remains claims, the cost of claims. And that, of course, is directly connected to natural disasters, which we're seeing exacerbated by climate change. And we've been seeing some pretty hard increases over the last few years. And really, insurance is a lagging indicator. So the cost of claims in the past will dictate what is going to be charged in the future. And, while they had increased dramatically a few years ago due to the costs associated with claims and, like construction, labor and materials, we're seeing signs that the market is starting to stabilize. So that's good news that the market conditions are improving, and we expect to see more price competition in the next 6 months is what we're looking at. Washington still has a fairly robust property casualty market, and we'd like to keep it that way.
Thank you. It sounds like there's maybe some potential silver lining or good news there, even though it is a tough time for a lot of folks.
Mhm.
Now, are there regions that you're noticing in Washington where insurance companies are reducing coverage or exiting the market? What's trending in terms of coverage reduction and just, non-renewal? And how is your office responding to ensure continued access to coverage statewide?
Yeah, excellent question. We are seeing pockets of non-renewals and cancellations around the state, and that is due mainly to the risk from wildfire. And we are tracking these because we want to see where the communities that are the most vulnerable, where they are in the state. Wildfire risk is now the number one reason that people are joining our FAIR plan, which is the Fair Access to Insurance plan. It's our insurer of last resort. Um, you know, it, it's changed. I mean, before last year, the number one reason for going on our FAIR plan was the number of claims that you filed. And now that it has become wildfire risk, I mean, I think that's another data point that we need to pay attention to. But that said, we still have under 400 policies statewide on our FAIR plan. If you compare that to states like Florida or California, where you have hundreds of thousands of homeowners on their version of the FAIR plan, we're doing pretty well. And what we've also seen is that people tend to be only on the FAIR plan here in Washington from, up to like 90 days, and they're able to find alternate coverage. It is expensive, and that's a huge motivator. But it's something that we're looking at. And, I'd like to see us invest more in mitigation and infrastructure hardening against disasters in particular, because they are really tending to drive the cost overall of property casualty around the country.
Thank you. So I know you mentioned the FAIR Plan, and that, of course, is a resource for homeowners who find themselves encountering non-renewal. In addition to the FAIR Plan, are there other protections you could speak to that may be in place for a homeowner who faces non-renewal or just sudden premium spikes and is like, hey, my insurance cost just went up substantially. What do I do about that? What rights do I have?
Well, you have the right to know why. And that's a transparency rule that we put into effect. And we're still in the process of implementing that rule. The last piece of it will be implemented by January 1st of 2029. And essentially, if you write to your insurance company or email them as well, that counts. They need to tell you the reasons that your premium went up, and this is mainly for auto and homeowners. And I think that piece is really important. There seems to be a lack of transparency within the industry, within PNC, property casualty, homeowners, auto in particular. And I think people, they can make more informed choices when they have that information. Another thing that we're working on is trying to make sure that insurance companies give people access to their wildfire risk score. This is something that they don't have to give you right now. So we had a bill last year that would have required that disclosure, and it would have also required the insurance companies to tell homeowners what they could do to improve their score. That bill had very strong bipartisan support out of the Senate, but it unfortunately died in the House committee this last year. We're hoping to get that over the finish line next year because but in the meantime, we are going around the state in a program we call Community Connect, and we are helping to educate consumers on wildfire risk. And we created a toolkit for this that is free of charge that people can have to see what they can do to help fortify their homes against that risk and to maintain their insurability, because ultimately that's what people want.
Fantastic. I'm noting that so that we can include links and resources with the slides and information from today's session. So thank you. So I was reading an article recently, and I know it did not center on Washington State. Like, I don't think it provided Washington State data, but it was about how nationally and particularly in the South, Latinos are disproportionately impacted by insurance, high homeowners insurance costs, non-renewal, et cetera. And there were various factors for that, including credit, and other potentially, discriminatory practices, et cetera. So my question for you is, when you're looking at Washington State specifically, are there certain communities, whether that's racial or ethnic communities, whether that's rural, certain regions, historically underserved populations that are disproportionately impacted by those rising premiums or reduced availability? I know you mentioned, those may be, deemed at a higher fire risk, but like, are there more layers to who's most impacted?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's something that the legislature has asked us to look at. 2 years ago, in the 2025 session, my first year in office, we were able to get agency request legislation passed that requires us to look at credit, the use of credit scores. And our role as a regulator is to make sure the rates are not excessive, they're not inadequate, and they're not unfairly discriminatory. That is the piece, the unfairly discriminatory piece, that can be the hardest to nail down. So in the past, when I was in the legislature, I had signed on to a bill to ban the use of credit scores in insurance. And the reason I signed on to that is because the national research that I looked at convinced me that it was being used in a discriminatory fashion. The industry will tell you that there's a correlation between low credit scores and the number of claims that are filed, and that justifies an increase in premium. Two things can be true at once. You can have a correlation, you can also have it being unfairly applied. And so when they also offered national research, and they kept saying, you can't pass this bill in Washington because you don't have state-specific data. So this bill will address state-specific data and the use of credit scores within Washington State, and is that unfairly discriminatory to certain populations. Interestingly, even though it was the industry's idea, they came out against the bill when we were trying to run it. So I haven't made up my mind one way or the other. I'm waiting to see the data. I'm very heavily evidence-based, and I want to see what the data tells us about the use of credit scores and other rating factors in Washington, so that we have a better understanding of how these impact homeowners and consumers in the state. I also want to point out one other thing, Elizabeth, the use of AI and the algorithms, right? I think that we need to have, we hired a cybersecurity chief information officer and cybersecurity expert here who has a lot of background in AI. And the point of that is to help us understand how we can use it better for the folks that work here, that they can do their jobs more efficiently and effectively, but also how to better understand how it's being used in the industry and whether it's being used fairly. Because again, it just, we have to make sure that we're following the statute and fulfilling our obligation to the consumers of the state, that these things are not being unfairly discriminatorily applied. So that's what we're focused on.
Thank you. Now, you've hit on a few of these already, but my next question is, are there additional legislative changes that you would prioritize in 2027 to stabilize homeowners insurance, the market, consumer protections around homeowners insurance in Washington State?
Yeah, thank you. Several, actually. Our wildfire bills, one is the transparency bill that I talked about. The other one is to create a wildfire grant mitigation program. And the goal would be for us to utilize funds that are here at the Office of the Insurance Commissioner on a pilot program to help homeowners that qualify for the grant program to have this money given to them in order to fortify their homes against the risk of wildfire. I think that this is really an important program because I think the best bang for the buck for the taxpayer dollar is going to be prevention. And quite frankly, I don't know anybody that wants to see their house burn down, and the insurance company doesn't want to pay you when your house burns down. So it's a win-win if we can fortify against wildfire, right? And the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety has wildfire standards. They are scientifically based. They're proven to help homes withstand wildfire. I've seen homes out in Lahaina and in Pacific Palisades in California that were standing after the wildfire swept through those urban areas. So we know that they work, but people just need to be able to access funding in order to fortify their homes. So we are trying to get that program up and running. It passed by strong bipartisan vote again out of the Senate, and again got hung up in the same committee in the House, unfortunately. But we're bringing that back next year because I think that's going to be very helpful to people. An interesting thing about that bill, though, that is different from any other state that's already gone down this this path, and that is that we put in that if a consumer retrofits their home to IBHS standards, then the insurer will not be able to non-renew or cancel for wildfire risk. I think that's fair. It's their standards. The homeowner, whether they do it through a grant program or on their own, they're retrofitting their home to those standards. They should stand behind that and not cancel them because of the risk of wildfire. So that was not something they liked very much, but I think we're going to be able to get there next year. So there's that. Another bill deals with the assignment of benefits ban. So an assignment of benefits is when you are already post-disaster and you need to rebuild and you hire a contractor and you sign over your rights to the insurance policy to them. They pursue the claim, essentially. But their interests are different from yours. You may need, additional living expenses. The contractor doesn't care about that. So they're not going to pursue that for you. We've seen these abused in Florida in particular. And it's one of those things where it's happened here, but not a lot. But I would like to see it not happen at all. So we want to get that banned. That also got hung up in the same House committee, unfortunately. Got out of the Senate again, unanimous, that one was. But it's just a good bill. Another one is an insurance fraud modernization bill. Our insurance fraud statutes have not been modernized since the early 2000s. And just so people know, insurance fraud in this country annually costs about $300 billion. That adds about $900 per policy per year, or per homeowner per year. That's a lot. And we want to modernize our fraud statutes so that we can go after, the more sophisticated technology-based fraud schemes and really make an impact in that. We have contracted with prosecutors in the state. Pierce County is the most notable one that we've done recently in order for them to prosecute these insurance fraud claims on our behalf. And I just think that, we want to stop fraudsters from taking advantage of people. That's part of what we do. And we have a criminal investigations unit that works directly with local law enforcement and prosecutors to get that done. So we just need to modernize our statutes so we have the tools and resources available to us to combat it. Thank
you. Sounds like it's going to be a busy 2027 legislative session. But all very, very compelling issues and potential ways to address them. Now, another question that I wanted to ask you was just kind of, as we are thinking about folks who become homeowners, often, for the first time, there's the notion that, homeownership is going to result in a fixed payment. And now with insurance, often tied to your mortgage payment, insurance costs going up, property taxes going up, right? Like, it's not so fixed. And we're experiencing that as we work with folks, facing foreclosure, who are just squeezed in so many different directions, right? Everything from groceries to to insurance. But when we think about ways that we might be able to help folks better understand their homeowners insurance, um, better make it affordable, or at least within the system we currently have, do you encounter any common myths that folks have around their homeowners insurance, and any additional tips or things that they might want to consider for being able to help make that more affordable?
Sure. One of the myths is that people think if they stay with a company for a very long time, that's going to be the best bang for the buck, the best premium price. Not necessarily so. My advice is to shop around. Different companies evaluate risk differently. You can look at bundling your home and auto policies. That's another thing that I would suggest that people do. Ask what discounts are available. I'm a big fan of the senior discount these days. And I would say, if you don't ask, you don't know, right? But I do think that shopping around is really, really important. One of the things that people should do is review their policies for coverages to make sure that you are adequately covered. You can ask your agent or broker about that to help you analyze that. What we found in the December floods, for example, is that a lot of people didn't have flood insurance. And they thought they did, but that's another myth. Homeowners does not include flood risk. You have to purchase that separately through the National Flood Insurance Program. There are some private plans now, but it's still mainly the National Flood Insurance Program that writes that business. And I think that, the other thing is that people can be underinsured. And the myth is that if you have actual cash value, that you're going to be adequately covered. And that is not necessarily the case. You may want to compare the cost of replacement value as opposed to actual cash value of your home. So those are just some things that you want to look at. I would say that one of the things folks should know is that there is a notice period before a company can non-renew or cancel you. In the past, it was 45 days, but when I was in the legislature, we did extend that to 60 days. They have to give you 60 days notice. And the reason for that is that you want to be able to look around and see what's out there to replace your insurer who has decided to non-renew or cancel you. And again, different companies evaluate the risk differently. So we still are seeing, that there are other companies in the admitted market that are willing to write homeowners policies. So you're not necessarily going to have to go on the FAIR plan. But if, worst case scenario happens and you have no other option, there is the FAIR plan.
Thank you. So we're transitioning to a couple of questions that came from folks who are here today who submitted questions prior. One of them is, and you've shared a couple, but what resources does the Office of the Insurance Commissioner offer for practitioners, housing counselors, lenders, but also for homeowners themselves who may be in need and may not know that you offer them?
Well, I'd say the number one resource that we bring to the table is we have live humans who will answer the phone when you have a question about your insurance policy.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, it is a big deal. It's not AI. I promise you. It's real AI, real actual intelligence. Real people answering the phone. And they're happy to talk with you about your insurance policy. But your best resource will be your insurance agent to talk with them as well. But if you have any dispute with an insurance company, we want to be the first call that you make because we will investigate. And if the insurance company has violated the law or are not following their contract, we found in some cases that it was the call to us where the insured actually got their policy for the first time, a written policy, because a lot of these policies are online, right? But they're not able to access it or see it. But we have had instances where we're the ones asking for a copy of the policy and transmitting that to the insured. So we We also know for claim denials, the denial letter should have information about how to appeal. The property casualty folks, which of course covers homeowners, they don't have the same robust appeal process that our medical claims do, but please call us if you have any issue with them, because we want to make sure that you're treated fairly by your company.
Thank you. Another question that came across my desk, I think you addressed earlier in terms of sharing when you started your legislative priorities and how you'd like to see additional support for fire prevention, mitigation. But I do want to share the story with you because it's a personal story from someone who actually in our network has experienced some of this in real time. So I wanted to share the anecdote with you and see whether you have additional things you'd like to add since they are here today. So I will just read this verbatim. It says, as someone with lived experience of having an insurance company drop coverage because of the fire line, and then having to scramble to find another company with a higher premium and less coverage, I know how scary that experience can be. I immediately contacted our county to do a FireWise inspection. They offered suggestions on fire protection, but also shared that there is no funding to implement those preventative measures. For our low-income homeowners, this will be a significant barrier to protecting their home from an active forest fire and meeting carrier expectations to maintain their homeowner's insurance. All affected parties should be deeply vested in addressing this failure. Homeowners want to remain. Insurance companies don't want major payouts if a fire should impact the home. And the county would want to reduce the burden on emergency personnel during an active fire. What steps is Commissioner Kuderer taking to ensure adequate funding is available to support fire risk mitigation? Anything else that you'd like to add there?
Well, I think the main one is the pilot program that we'd like to get started, that we want to fund with monies from our regulatory account and not the general fund. I think that will be a means-tested program, and so it will help our low and moderate income families to retrofit their homes against the risk of wildfire. And using the industry's own gold standard, the IBHS standards, I think that are scientifically proven to reduce wildfire risk. Our goal is to focus on those pockets of non-renewals that we're seeing around the state right now, because those are the industry is seeing something there. The industry has some of the top climate scientists at their disposal, and they're doing this catastrophic modeling, and they're mapping it out. So I'll give you an example with Pacific Palisades, State Farm non-renewed 1,400 policies 6 months before the fire swept through. So they were seeing something, right? So these are red flags for us. That's why we are paying attention to where these pockets of non-renewals are happening. And we want to work collaboratively with the Department of Natural Resources, DNR, with their, Wildfire Ready Neighbors program, which deals in the natural environment, right? And we can fortify homes in the built environment if we focus our efforts together, maximize those resources, maximize it at the same time. I think that makes the most sense. We'll be able to get more work done that way. But I am very concerned about this year's wildfire season. I think it was a missed opportunity that the legislature did not pass this grant program, but we're not sitting on our hands. We're laying the foundation within the Office of the Insurance Commissioner. We're getting, the structure for the program set up, getting the software, getting everything ready to go so that when the legislature does pass it next year, that we hit the ground running, because, and we're also going out into communities and talking to them about wildfire risk and what they can do right now that doesn't cost a lot of money, to help improve their insurability and reduce their risk of wildfire. And I can tell you, we were just in Medical Lake last month, I believe it was. And of course, they had that terrible fire a few years ago. And they are saying that this kind of program would have helped them. So we are very much committed to making sure consumers have information and that they know what they can do ahead of time to stay insured. That's our goal. We want to have a strong, healthy insurance market, competitive insurance market, and we want to make sure that consumers are protected.
As someone who lives in Eastern Washington and can literally smell the smoke right now, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Our staff actually has personal connection to Medical Lake and to I'm in the same county as Malden, and so we see firsthand the impact of these devastating fires, and the time to act was yesterday.
Yep.
And it's still now, right?
Yep.
So yeah,
Yep.
thank you. We have time for questions that have started to pop up in the chat. So, did you have anything else you wanted to say before we tackle some of those with you today, Commissioner Kuderer?
Well, I know that this is about home ownership, but you mentioned my work on universal health care. I did just want to let folks know that my office did recently present to the Universal Healthcare Commission on the concept of universal primary care and behavioral health. And we see a path forward with that. That is definitely utilization of primary care will help drive down healthcare costs overall and save lives. I believe the research tells us that. So I just want you to know that, and you can learn more about that on our website. But now back to homeownership. Now back to your regular scheduled programming.
Well, one of the things that we consistently see on the homeownership and foreclosure prevention hotline is that it's all connected, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
medical emergency is a leading reason why people are unable to pay their other bills. And so it is a huge driver of displacement. So we really appreciate your work in that area.
Absolutely true. Absolutely. I
Yes.
had a client who was unfortunately in a very terrible accident and became a quadriplegic, and that care caused him to lose his home. So yes, it does, the cost of that care. So they are absolutely linked.
Absolutely. Yeah, we see that multiple times a day. I'm glad that you're calling attention to that. A question that came up in the chat that we get frequently is, what are your thoughts about earthquake coverage here in Washington State?
Yeah, it's something that you should talk to your agent about. And we are in an earthquake prone area. And I think it's really important to know what it covers and what it doesn't cover. We are talking right now to insurance companies, because of just the whole climate change issue and also the issue of earthquakes. Local governments in the state need to be better prepared too. So we're talking to them about catastrophic bonds and parametric insurance, which are defined benefit plans essentially to pay out after certain metrics are met. That might be, I don't know, the parametric insurance is something that is appropriate for a homeowner per se. But those kind of products are out there, and I would suggest people talk to their insurance agent about earthquake insurance and whether or not they think it's a wise investment.
Along a similar vein, we have been getting questions about FEMA flood insurance, and with all of the things happening in the other Washington, the lesser Washington, do you have any advice for folks who are seeking to obtain that insurance and may experience delays, or are you hearing about any concerns from folks pursuing flood insurance?
Yes, that's a really good question. The other Washington, it should be more focused on solving problems rather than creating them. But the gutting of FEMA is a huge problem for states and local governments. We had, I believe it was 12 FEMA reps in the Pacific Northwest area. Now we're down to one. And the problem is that, we're not going to be we don't have a reliable federal partner when it comes to natural disasters. So it does mean that we're kind of on our own. And what I would suggest, and this is what we're talking to, I was just at a city council meeting last night talking about this very issue. We're going to have to invest more in mitigation. That is the upfront, hardening of our infrastructure, reinforcing our levees, especially in those areas where we have seen floods. We saw them along the Skagit River Valley, right? The area that had been able to use FEMA grant funds to invest in hardening those levees did fairly well. The part that was slated for that improvement but hadn't quite, got the money yet and hadn't been able to do it, they didn't fare as well. So I think it's really important that we think about what we can do to prevent as much damage as possible on the front end, but we also have to make sure that, you have to look at your insurance policy and make sure that you are adequately covered for the assets that you own and, the risks that you are willing to take.
Thank you. Another question that popped up in the chat is, it seems like urban expansion is a prime factor in determining risk to property based on natural disasters/environmental risks. I'm thinking of the NFIP as one offset for flood risk to property owners. Is that where WUI code might be moving in Washington or elsewhere?
Yeah, the WUI code, the wildland urban interface, it's an issue. I think, the insurance industry is looking and saying, we just don't think people should build in this area. We're not going to insure that risk. So I think cities also have to this is a partnership. So local governments and their zoning ordinances, they have to be looking at updated maps in terms of where are the risks. They also have to be looking at mitigation. How can they harden their infrastructure if they are going to be building in certain areas? What are they going to do to protect those buildings? Builders need to be involved in this conversation. They've been actually kind of hesitant to get behind the pilot program, to retrofit homes because they don't want to include those standards in the building code because they think it's going to add lots and lots of money to the cost of a home and people won't build homes. That's just not true. That hasn't borne out in other states where they have invested in these kinds of programs. So we need to get builders on board too. But I would just say that, the WUI code, there are a lot of moving parts to that question. I can't answer all of it because I can only say from the standpoint of the insurance commissioner's office, and I don't regulate zoning. But I can't force an insurance company to insure you. I can make sure that when they do, they follow the law and follow their contract, but I cannot force them to take a risk.
That's a helpful clarification, I think, especially in this environment that we're in. Another question that came through is from one of our partners at the Tacoma Pierce County Habitat for Humanity affiliate. And as you may know, we have some amazing Habitat for Humanity affiliates and other home repair providers throughout the state. And so one of the things that comes up is, and I'll just read this from my colleagues' question in the chat, is that in Alabama, the Department of Insurance has a Strengthen Alabama Homes program to support the replacement of roofs for low and moderate income homeowners. Our number one request from local low-income existing homeowners is roof help here in Pierce County through our Aging in Place program. Could Washington consider a program like this? And I have to say, we hear it on the hotline too. It's the roofs.
Yeah, it is an excellent question. And the answer is yes, we could consider that here in Washington State, and we should. The Strengthen Alabama Homes law, the program, is the first of its kind. And it has been highly successful. The data is compelling that by fortifying the roofs the way that they did, again, to IBHS standards for, roofs being exposed to convective storms and hurricanes and wind-driven storms. It shows that it's been very, very successful. And the market there is very strong. You compare that to Louisiana, Florida, not as strong because they haven't really adopted it. And they've got 10 years of data to show that program has been successful. We don't need to wait 10 years. It would be part of, I think, as we look to mitigate against wildfire, roofs are definitely a big part of that. One of the things that happened last session was a bill that passed that we supported that prohibited HOAs from requiring, certain aesthetics that might be.
I remember.
Yeah. So, you don't have to have a shake roof anymore, even if the HOA says you do, that sort of thing. And I think that's just common sense. And we have to bring people along and educate them about what's happening with climate change. And it's accelerating, unfortunately. And whether, folks in positions of power in the other Washington want to believe that it's happening or not is completely and utterly irrelevant, because the insurance industry believes it's happening. And they are making business decisions based on the fact that it is happening. And that's something that we need to deal with, the realities on the ground. And I think, we need to be more offensive on this. We need to be more proactive in fortifying our infrastructure against the threat of climate change.
I think you're seeing the positive responses from your audience right now on those comments. Absolutely. Another question is from one of our community land trust providers. There have been reports of some homeowners and community land trust or CLT homes encountering difficulty obtaining or renewing their homeowners insurance solely due to their home's status as a CLT home. Are there steps that can be taken to prevent this from becoming a wider trend, especially as we're trying to tackle homeownership affordability and build more CLT homes?
Yeah, well, you've given me something to look at. That is, I've not had that issue presented to me yet. I just did now. So we'll take a look at that and see what options are available. But I appreciate you putting that on my radar.
Thank you. And thank you, folks who have been posting some amazing questions. There is another question. Is there a list of insurance companies that are providers within our state or counties that folks can reference?
A list of them on our website? You can look
I
up
think
the insurance company on our website.
Folks who are serving Washington. Okay, so you do maintain like a directory, or?
You can look up a company on our website.
Okay.
Yeah, and we redesigned our website. It's award-winning, I just want to say. That it's more user-friendly, and we're trying to put as much information out there as possible that will help people, as they look to find coverage in the state. I don't know if we have a list per se of companies that you can just go down. But we do have, I know we have, a list of licensed entities that we regulate.
We have just a few more minutes. I'm going to end with one more question from the chat and then a couple of unserious questions, because when you mentioned your award-winning website, I also needed to give your team kudos. You have quite a social media game. I don't know who's doing. You all are everywhere.
Wait till you see our new dog mascot.
Your outreach, I mean, it's phenomenal. So we're going to get to the unserious in a minute, but one more serious question is, I think, have given people a lot of food for thought today, and there is a desire to follow up on some of these, initiatives that you've spoken about, preparing for 2027 legislative session and some of the priorities that you've highlighted. Who can folks contact at your office to get involved? What are some ways that they can plug in?
They can actually go onto our website and sign up to get alerts on our proposed legislation. And they can learn about when it's going to be heard in a committee, how they can get involved in terms of, letting their opinion be known one way or the other, how they feel about the proposed legislation. And our website is insurance.wa.gov, so it's pretty easy to remember, and a lot of those links are right there on the first page.
Thank you so much for your time today. As we get ready to end, I told you that I'd have a couple of unserious questions just to wrap things up. I mentioned I'm in Eastern Washington, so I want to ask you, Cougs or Huskies?
Boy.
Be transparent. We are being recorded.
Both.
Such a safe answer.
I know, right?
Now, keeping this up.
Uh-huh.
World Cup or cup of coffee?
I'm going to go with World Cup.
We could still be friends, but I would have said cafecito. Thank you so much for your time today. I would love to keep questions going and send them to your team because you do have such an amazing outreach and social media game. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to continue to send you unsolicited, of course, any additional questions or topics that folks, have had today that we may not have had time to address. And we would love to continue this conversation. We also, just as a reminder, folks, we have our Slack channel that you can go and you can continue the conversation with one another, network, and get ready for the 2027 legislative session, right? We talked about a number of different priorities and ways that folks can plug in today. So we're really excited to keep the momentum going. And thank you so much again, Commissioner Kuderer, to you and to your team for your time today.
Well, thank you. And I really appreciate everybody's time as well. And I know that some of my team members have been posting in the chat too additional resources that folks can access. But just one last thought, and that is, if you do have any issue with your insurance company, please let us know. We're here to help.
Thank you again. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. Great attendance.
Thank you.
Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.